Hey students, welcome to episode 42 of the Film Student Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Lazzeroni, and today I want to start off with an apology. Since the beginning of this podcast, I've been saying that this show would be interviews with my classmates, teachers, and a few special guests. And I've interviewed a ton of my classmates and a handful of special guests, but it's taken me 42 episodes to schedule a teacher. That said, I'm getting you started with a great one. My guest this week is Kat O'Brien, who is one of our amazing creative writing teachers at HRFS. We talk about her first produced work, Conversion of the Badass Nun, yeah, that's the real title, how to make a truly timeless film, and what makes this school unique. On with the show.
Origin story is, like every great superhero movie. I discovered that with great power comes great responsibility. So I ended up...
Spider-Man is in everything. Everything.
It's so pervasive. What happened is that I was actually out getting drinks with Mariano, one of our other faculty members, and he and another friend of ours were mentioning that there was going to be this Harold Ramis Film School starting up at the Second City, and I had read about it, and I was like, I have to work there.
Yeah.
And I was like, who do we know there? And they're like, Julie. And I was like, Julie? That's amazing.
How do you know Julie?
I know Julie from our days at Columbia College, Chicago.
Okay.
Julie and I collaborated in the producing area when she was teaching and also working at the Portfolio Center, helping students to put together a full range of deliverables to launch them into their careers. A full-on portfolio, but also like the web and presentation aspect of those portfolios.
Gotcha.
And so I knew Julie, and then I knew Jack, also from Columbia, but I didn't know Jack personally. But another of our faculty here, Vince, knew Jack.
Okay.
And so, in speaking with our mutual friends from Columbia, I was able to quickly connect to both Jack and Julie, and it went from there. And I met Trevor, and we spoke with other writing teachers about how to put together the program. And the more we spoke, the more we realized that we really had a great synergy and a shared vision and a passion for putting this together.
Yeah. And you've been, at that point in time, you've already done a fair amount of writing, because we've heard a lot of the backstory in class of some of the
a lot. No, yeah, a lot of writing.
Bullshit. There was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot of writing.
But so how did you get into that? How did you get into writing as a thing?
So writing as a thing, I've always been a storyteller. I've always been a writer. When I was a child, I thought that it would be really funny to live my life as if I was going to write a story about it. So I'd go out of my way to make decisions in the moment. Like, is this going to make for a good story? How can I raise the stakes? What sort of conflicts can I get into today?
So you're a bit of a sociopath.
Maybe, hard maybe. And I loved it. It was the thing that I loved doing the most. I did improv and sketch writing in high school. I was very much wanting to be an actress. So I was very into theater around Chicago growing up. I performed at the Steppenwolf. I took workshops at Second City. And then...
Did you get to study under any of the original Steppenwolf people? I know Malkovich and...
they were not part of the teen workshop
at that point. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know.
But there were some other luminary theater folk, one of whom won a MacArthur Genius Grant about 8 years ago. And they were... I was very lucky to be in Chicago in a theater scene with a lot of amazing directors and teachers, and they fueled my passion for the theater arts. And then one day, this guy walks into my English class in high school, and he's like, we need chicks to apply to film school. My buddy leans over, and he's like, they totally need chicks to apply to film school. And I looked, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this chicks applying to film school idea, quote unquote chicks, but okay. And I was like, when's the deadline? And they're like, tomorrow. So I FedExed an application, and at the very last minute to USC Film School. Yeah. I got a phone call very early on, like in February, from the chairman saying that I was in and did I want to come to USC. And that's I hadn't even really finished thinking through my other applications for other schools. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a screenwriter. And so I went. And I fell in love with screenwriting. The first day of my screenwriting class, I said to my professor, I was like, man, when I feel this way about a dude, I'm going to marry him. About screenwriting, that is. And he was like, okay. And I didn't really look back.
Mm. What was the first thing that you wrote that you got to see fully produced out or that you produced out?
My student films.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what was the first one? Do you remember?
The first one? Yeah. Conversion of the Badass Nun.
Awesome.
It was special.
Is this a topic that you've revisited at any point in time?
I haven't. Although I feel like it's probably ripe for a reboot because what isn't these days?
Yeah, exactly. And you could easily. I love when friends of mine have told me they like from one of their first films they just took a character and dropped it into other things later on. It's like I just really liked this one friend of mine that always did this. It's the Kevin Smith angle.
Yes.
Which is he keeps on using these random guys who are not actors. They only act in his movies, but like the guy who plays Randall is in like doesn't really act.
Yeah,
outside.
Wes Anderson does that too.
Yeah, and just randomly pulls people in.
Yeah.
So you could easily do that.
Yeah, I think I could. I think my friends might be down. Yeah, I mean, it was just like here. That's what's another thing that's so fun about being here at the Harold Ramis Film School.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I said it like that.
It's because it feels oddly promotional.
It does feel oddly promotional.
It's not necessarily meant to be that.
I'm sort of joking. But seriously, the thing that I fell in love with was storytelling with friends.
Mm-hmm.
And the spontaneity of that creation that came through my improv background that I carried over and applied to my own filmmaking process at USC, and just carrying that forward. I mean, so many of my friends and collaborators have improv backgrounds, so it felt very natural coming here and creating a program here that just replicated what I missed the most about being in Los Angeles and working in the Hollywood-based film industry. To replicate that here in Chicago was just awesome.
And you're still actively working on stuff.
Yes,
mostly international, right?
Interestingly, at this moment, yes. Yeah. I am pursuing opportunities to make films in other parts of the world. That's like what's primary on my slate right at this moment. I do have other projects that I'm working with producers and companies that are based in Los Angeles, and those are sort of ongoing in development. And
but it takes a long time for that stuff to work through the pipeline. Like you'll write something and it'll be 5-6 years before it's in production. If it ever makes that far.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Simply because I think that it's easy to lose sight of the fact when you're working on a script that it's going to take years more of drafting and years more before it might get made when you're focusing on feature screenplays, just because the nature of the industry is that it is so big and it moves so slowly and it takes a long time for stuff to get made. I mean, some stuff happens faster, but not always. And I feel like it's maybe sort of like a psychological mental block that you put up for yourself, because otherwise, like if you sit down today to be like 10 years from now, this will be a movie.
Yeah.
It's like,
which is
man,
that's
how do you
the
stay
sad
focused?
part about the one that I'm writing for it, because it in the very beginning it was reference to the time. It wasn't even when I was in high school, because it's based on a true story. It wasn't the music. Like I have a music cue that's Hoobastank the Reason playing, and everybody that reads it's like, oh, I totally know where I was at that point in time. Like it's a nice little tie-in, but if this takes 5 to 6 years to get that song is no longer relevant to the time period, because there's a set time distance. So I'm going to have to update that flashback scene.
Been there, done it
multiple times in order to keep it relevant for the next reader of the film.
Yeah.
To see if it's something that's actually viable at that point in time.
I had to do that. I wrote a story about my high school experience when I was like 10 years out of high school.
Yeah.
And now I am 20 years out of high school. And I want to revisit that script because it ended up not getting made. And I still like the story, and I think I could make it myself. And I have to pretend in my head, like, oh, what would it have been like had I been in high school when I was actually not in high school?
Yeah.
When I was already out of college.
Which it's tough to do. It's tough because so much does change. Like, have you seen 8th Grade at all?
I haven't. It's at the top of my list.
It's
so
amazing for how, so far as I know, and I'm not, I'm not an 8th grader at the moment, so I can't say for certain, but like my nieces will say, like, it's dead on. It's amazing how close it is to that experience, despite it being done by a man in his 30s.
Your cultural reference points change.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's I mean, I've done a lot of scripts where that has been an issue of exploration, which is like a story takes place at a certain moment in time for the person who lived through that story, whether they were writing it or whether I was writing it, because I've come on to adapt others' work as well. And when you're living in the world of a story that takes place at a certain moment in time, and then you have to like move it forward in time, it's like everything shifts.
Yeah.
The way the world looks shifts, the cultural reference points shift, and the way that people interact with each other shifts because all those reference points are different.
I can't remember what I was watching the other night. Oh no, I do. It was actually not the other night. It was in Ron's class yesterday. We watched The Kids Are All Right, and that's from early 2000 or early. It was like 2010, 2011, something like that for that film. But you can tell the era because all the characters have flip phones. Whenever they get out to do a phone call, it's always flip phones.
That's so funny.
And so, and I just subconsciously noticed that now, and I'm like, I can place the era of that film based on
phone technology,
on the phone technology,
right?
And it's amazing how my brain just ties to that, or based on the cars that are in it, like the era of the vehicles. You just kind of subconsciously latch onto those things, and I think we're trained well enough to understand that those are cues of, oh, I'm looking at 1920s, 1940s. You can pick out a decade range based on those side pieces that aren't a part of the main story. Yeah. But it makes a big difference.
It does.
I've always been kind of fascinated with the idea of trying to write something that could avoid all those things.
Something that is timeless.
See, timeless is an interesting word, because I think there's stuff that's timeless that because it works so well in any time, but it is still dated as far as the actual.
No,
time
timeless
frame
is not the word I meant.
You know what I mean?
Of a word. Yeah, it's a word where time does not apply almost.
Yeah,
but I
exactly.
can't think of that word right now.
You would think I would think timeless would be the word, but it's already been kind of co-opted for other purposes. Like that's
true.
Because I think of like Trading Places as like a timeless movie to me. Like that, that one works, even though it is definitively in the 80s.
Right.
But yeah, it would be interesting to try and write something that would be truly timeless.
Yeah.
That doesn't have any kind of anchored point to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. One day. You could also do the Richard Linklater thing and shoot Boyhood and stretch it across however many decades, so you actually have to update the technology and all the things.
Yes, move through, production value challenges.
Yeah. So what stuff are you working on now that you can talk about? I know you've always got the super secret, double secret projects that you've got going on.
Right, and the triple secret.
Yep.
Black Ops. But
do you have a Black Ops folder on your computer?
No, but I should make one. Good idea. I would tell you. The projects that I'm working on now that I can talk about, that I'm most excited about, are I have a story that is pretty personal to me, just about my own experiences navigating life as a work-from-home mom. I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I am not a full-time working mom. I'm caught in this middle zone. Yeah. And that's not a unique situation for any parent. However, I feel like it's a world that's fertile enough for comedy and feeling alienated and lost and like you don't belong, that there's a lot to mine emotionally as well. And so my story is about a group of misfit moms who are all working in different ways. Some are full-time working, some are work from home, and our lead character is a full-time work from home mom who quote unquote retires to become a full-time stay-at-home mom and is now grappling with that shift. And she used to be a political wonk. Now she's living in Chicago, and she's experiencing the political climate we're in, and decides that she is going to start making friends with these other moms through grassroots organizing them. And the story follows their misadventures as they try to navigate the world of mom friendships on like the preschool kindergarten circuit, while also trying to figure out how to teach their children to become responsible human beings and socially adept and make friends.
Do you tend to like to consume stuff within the genre when you're trying to write something with the genre, or do you try and avoid things that you might inadvertently take over or copy?
Very broadly, I like to, when I'm writing a comedy, I like to be in comedy mode because I love seeing other people be funny and make me laugh. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'm feeling the funny. I'm going to go right. And
but you wouldn't go after something that's in the same vein of like parents with kids type stuff necessarily?
I mean, if it comes up, sure.
Yeah. Because I would make a recommendation. I don't necessarily want to pollute the choice.
What?
I'm Sorry on Netflix. Andrea Savage. It's
not watching it.
It is hysterical.
Yeah.
It is so well written.
Good.
It makes me think of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but she is the Larry David character, and she's literally a comedy writer in the show too.
Yeah.
And instead of Jeff Garlin, it's Jason Mantzoukas as the writing partner. That's a regular on there. And what's his name that played the drummer in That Thing You Do is her husband. Something Everett Scott, Tom Everett Scott, is her husband, and all these other comic people just pop up. Nick Kroll shows up, Paul Scheer shows up.
That's awesome.
Throughout the course of the first season. But it's about her being a comedy writer and raising a little girl and all the things that they do wrong, and every episode ends with her saying "I'm sorry," which is where the name of the show comes from.
So that kind of touches on another thing that I think is really important to the writing process, which is knowing everything that's in your project's wheelhouse as a reference, as a comparable, as quote unquote tonally in the vein of, so that you know that you are not retreading territory that's already been covered.
But you also, I feel like sometimes you can even get a feel for what's okay. Like that's a show that I feel like pushes the lines.
Yeah.
Like it's crass and they swear constantly, and it's not something I would ever put as like a parent comedy, but it is.
Yeah.
And so that I think like kind of broadens the spectrum if you're trying to create something in that vein, depending on what your target audience is.
Yeah, no. I mean that's part of where, I mean my brand of comedy is edgy, irreverent, borderline inappropriate.
You will appreciate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I really like to live on the borderline of inappropriate and appropriate.
Yeah.
With my jokes, because I really enjoy uncomfortable humor, like the sort of almost you're gonna cringe, that tension-filled humor, and so I'm hoping to create a show with a lot of moments like that in it.
Who or what are your influences for that stuff? Like, what do you? Who are your people that you will always go see in something or always track them down?
I mean, Tina, Amy, Judd.
Okay. Judd that was just here a couple days ago.
Just here. And I feel like everyone sort of has that moment in their evolution as an artist or a writer, or even just as a human, where it's like this moment in time in cultural history really defines me. It's like the music that you gravitate towards and you play for the rest of your life. It's the movies that you saw at a very specific formative moment in your, I'm going to call it adolescence / second adolescence, because I feel like our 20s are really just an extended adolescence.
Nowadays, yeah.
And
you're not expected to be a real adult until you hit 30.
Right. Or 40. I think
maybe
I think we're kind of moving to an era.
I'll find out when I get there.
Yeah. And I think that when you have those references that just have like influenced you so profoundly, it's really hard to break out of that comfort place, like, because I know that if I go back to anything that's been created by a certain list of musicians or a certain list of filmmakers, even as they are growing, I find that I am sort of growing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like comforting, like coming home, like going back to your family for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Only for like nourishing of your soul and creativity.
And way less political talk.
Yeah.
Or way more, depending on your family dynamic.
Yes.
I need to see The Oath, because that's the one that's about like a political argument with a family over Thanksgiving. That one I need to check out. They had the screening that Ike Barinholtz did a Q&A after like a few weeks ago, and I was prepping my term 3, so I'm like, I don't have time.
Yeah, I think it's really, again, kind of coming back to like what's timely and what's topical. I think that's another thing that really influences me. So it's not necessarily a person or other artist,
mm-hmm.
but it's the zeitgeist and finding a way to continually comment on what's happening in the world around us in a way that, for me, like my angle is, I view writing, again, coming back to with great power comes great responsibility. As a writer,
Spider-Man.
Right, but as a writer, I feel like we really have a sacred privilege and duty
mm-hmm.
to help others unpack
mm-hmm.
and reassemble and make sense of what we're experiencing right now
mm-hmm.
as a society, as a community, whichever community you feel you fit into and belong to. I think that's your audience.
Yeah.
And for me right now, I'm like deep in pre-K, kindergarten, motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to write stuff for my mom friends that are like also unpacking this shit. Is it okay that I said that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Awesome. I just like had a flash like Brian Williams being like, Beto just dropped an F-bomb. On election night on MSNBC.
I don't care about that. If anything, I like him more for that.
But it was on like, oh yeah, right. But it was on TV, like on not cable. And so they had, the network had to apologize. It was kind of funny.
It's not Jenny Slate. He's not getting fired off.
Right.
Which is still dumb to me that she got fired off SNL over that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anyway.
So,
especially in a sketch where they were saying friggin' constantly, like, and she just slipped because nobody actually talks like that.
Right. Well, I say friggin' for everything.
But it's
I don't say friggin'.
No, not at all.
It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I'm try it. Friggin'.
It's a code switch. Like, you have to be able to like cut that out of your vocabulary when you're talking to certain people.
Right.
And it's I didn't have a term for that. It's not code switching in the way that code switching is commonly known now, but it is
sure. Well, it's a comedic censorship that I think is in part a response once again to sort of what's happening around us. We've had this push and pull of we have to be PC, we shouldn't be PC, we have to be PC, we have to be more free, and exploring, what is censorship and
mm-hmm.
what offends others and what makes people uncomfortable and where is that line. I think we are at a moment in comedy where we are re-navigating that and replotting our coordinates to map for those that are coming after us.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting about how stories are being told today.
And comedy's got a unique ability to be able to comment on anything in a palatable way. That you can take a topic that's really sad, depressing, angering, ridiculous, whatever it is, and feed it through this prism of a comedic lens, and it suddenly is anybody can watch it and laugh at it, but then still take in the message that goes along with it.
Right, and think about it.
Yeah, and just be able to parse it apart and, as you said, unpack it or deal with it.
Right.
So, what is your hope for people that are going through this program or that are involved in it? What would you love to see happen with some of the people that have gone through here?
I would love to see the students that come through this program find a fulfilling way to keep being as creative and
mm-hmm.
funny as they are right now in this moment
mm-hmm.
in this program. I feel like we have created something magical here.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, and it's not like we, the school, it's the community of the students that are here, the teachers that are here. the guests that come in, I mean, everyone that's involved with this school.
The Second City methodology in general.
Yeah. That there's a generosity that I find to be exceptionally unique in that people want to collaborate with each other. They want to share ideas. They want to help you make your ideas funnier, better, happen. And that generosity is something that I think as an artist and as a collaborator, I just find intoxicating and so fulfilling. And it makes me so happy to be around that energy. And I just would love for our students to get the same.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, in kind of wrapping up, if people want to try and track you down on social media, anything like that, do you use anything? Do you post? No.
Black Ops is the rule.
Really? Just complete quiet across the board. That's impressive.
No, I'm totally
okay. Good.
Not. My website is kobrwriting.com.
Okay.
And you can connect with me there. And I am also popping up on Facebook, and even less so on Twitter, and even less so on Instagram, because I can't figure out how to log into my Instagram. I don't know, like it just like I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm just being hacked by the Russians, because I just have this ongoing login battle with Insta. So I think I'm just gonna like hit reboot and just start a brand new Insta, Black Ops Cat.
There you go. This Black Ops thing you're doubling down on. This is becoming a new brand from today.
I think I'm going to double down on this, because ultimately, if the writing thing bores me and becomes unfulfilling at a certain point in time, I would like to go join the CIA.
Yeah, just become a contract killer. That's,
I feel like I would be good at that. I don't think people would expect me to do it. I think that's why, because everyone's like, you can't keep a secret. Like, you can't do these things. And I'd be like, that's exactly why you want me.
No one expects the female
right,
screenwriter.
You want me on the wall. You want me to be the watcher.
You're the new Spanish Inquisition. Let's.
Oh, ouch! I think we need to cut before that comment.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tony. This was fun.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And that was Kat O'Brien. Thank you to Kat and to the Harold Ramis Film School and the Second City staff for their help. The song on this week's episode was Out of the Sun by Derek Evry. Find more of Derek's killer music at derekevry.com. That's DerekEvry. This show is recorded and edited by me, Tony Lazzeroni. If you want to hear more from me and my classmates, teachers, and a few special guests, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you have questions or comments, send us an email at filmstudentpod@gmail.com or find us on Twitter and Instagram at filmstudentpod. And be sure to check out some of my and my classmates' work at filmstudentpod.com, where you can also find links to all of our past episodes. See you all next week. Class dismissed.